My wife asked for a divorce after I spent 3 days planning my dad's funeral, even though she knew how important it was to me. You picked them over me, she said when I walked in. I didn't yell or argue. I just nodded, packed my things, and left. A week later, her dad called asking for. There are moments in life that just hit you like a freight train, moments that rip apart everything you thought you knew. For me, it was the day my wife looked me dead in the eye, just 3 days after I'd buried my father. A man I hadn't always seen eye to eye with, but my father nonetheless, and she coldly said, "You chose them over me." I didn't yell, I didn't argue. I just nodded, packed my bag, and walked out. What followed was a whirlwind that exposed betrayals I never saw coming, and taught me what it truly means to defend what's yours. It all started when I got the call. Dad. The name on my phone faded as the screen went dark. He was gone. A heart attack, they said, quick and painless. But I knew better. Nothing about Spencer Renner's life had ever been quick or painless. I sat there, running my hand over the smooth mahogany of my desk, looking out at the Boston skyline from my office. I'd built an empire in private security by 42, something my father, a tough Marine turned construction worker, never quite grasped. Another late night, and then Audrey, my wife of 15 years, was there in the doorway. Sleek blonde hair, moving with that grace that still got me, just like the first time I saw her at a charity gala. I was security, she was serving champagne and ambition. My father died, I said, the words feeling hollow. There was a beat. Oh, she said. When's the funeral? I need to arrange it. I was already on my feet, mentally ticking off the endless list of things to do. I'll be heading to Vermont tonight. Probably be there a few days. A shadow crossed her face. But the Westfields party is this weekend. We've been planning for months. Your contacts will all be there. My jaw tightened. My father is dead, Audrey. She stepped closer. You haven't spoken to him in what, 3 years? You've complained about him your entire life. Now suddenly you're dropping everything. He was still my father, I said, my voice tight. And I'm your wife. We have plans, responsibilities, opportunities. Her hand slid up my arm. Send flowers. Make a donation. But you don't need to upend our lives for a man who never approved of them. I gently removed her hand. I'm going to Vermont. I'll be back when it's done. I packed mechanically. Dark suits, dress shirts, the watch my father had given me when I graduated high school. The only thing he'd ever given me that truly mattered. As I loaded my suitcase into the Audi, Audrey appeared in the garage doorway. This is a mistake, Dom. I looked at her, really looked, and for a moment, I saw something unfamiliar in her eyes. Something calculating, maybe. I just nodded. Maybe. But it's mine to make. The 4-hour drive north gave me too much time to think. About my father, the man who'd raised me alone after my mother died, with all the tenderness of a drill sergeant. About our last argument, when he'd shown up at my office, all gruff and unannounced. You've got fancy suits now, but you're still that scrawny kid who needed my help. He'd growled. I built this company from nothing. I'd shot back. Nothing? I put food in your mouth. I put ambition in your heart. Everything you are started with me. We hadn't spoken since. And now, pulling into Shelburne, Vermont, population 7,717, I wondered if he'd been right. The funeral home was exactly what I expected, tasteful, subdued, overpriced. The director, Mr. Calloway, guided me through options with practiced solemnity. Your father was well respected in the community, he offered. Military honors would be appropriate. Yes, I agreed. And I want his friends from the construction company invited. Open bar afterward. When my phone buzzed with Audrey's name, I sent it to voicemail. By midnight, I'd secured the church, arranged for the casket, drafted an obituary. In his sparse living room, surrounded by fishing trophies and military commendations, I finally allowed myself a moment to feel. Not grief exactly. Something more complex. Regret, perhaps. For words unsaid. For the stubborn pride we'd shared. My phone buzzed again. Audrey. 3 days, Dom. That's all I'm asking. Reschedule it. Your father won't care. I didn't respond. The second day in Vermont brought unexpected discoveries. In my father's bedroom closet, behind rows of flannel shirts and worn jeans, I found a small fireproof safe. The combination, my birthday, opened easily. Inside, discharge papers from the Marines, the deed to the house, an envelope of cash totaling $32,677, and a handwritten letter dated just 3 weeks earlier. Dominic, if you're reading this, I'm gone. Probably for the best. Doctor says my heart's failing, stubborn thing finally giving out. I wasn't a good father. Too much Marine, not enough dad. But I was always proud. Even when I couldn't say it. That security company of yours, you built something real, something that helps people. I bragged about you to anyone who'd listen. The money's for whatever you need. No strings, no lectures. Spencer Renner, USMC, retired. I read it twice, then folded it carefully into my pocket. My phone rang. Audrey again. What? I answered, my voice tight. The Westfields are asking specifically about you, she said without preamble. Thomas wants to discuss their overseas expansion. This could be worth millions to us, Dom. Thomas can wait. Tell him I'm burying my father. I already did. He doesn't care. This is business, not a social call. My grip tightened on the phone. Then tell him I don't care either. You're being irrational. All of this for what? A funeral no one will attend. The words hit harder than she probably intended. I'll be there, I said finally. That's enough. The rest of the day passed in a blur of arrangements. The funeral home, the florist, the caterer for the modest reception. Each task anchored me, gave structure to the shapeless grief I couldn't quite access. That evening I found myself at Merle's, my father's favorite bar. A no-nonsense establishment that hadn't changed its decor since the 1970s. You're Spencer's boy, the bartender said, sliding a whiskey across the scarred wooden bar. He talked about you all the time. Did he? I asked, genuinely surprised. Oh yeah. My son, the big-shot security expert. That Boston accent of yours might be gone, but he made sure everyone knew where you came from. The idea that my father had been proud, had spoken of me regularly, shifted something fundamental in my understanding of our relationship. My phone vibrated. A text from Audrey. Called the funeral home. They can postpone until next Tuesday. Coming home tomorrow. I stared at the screen, incredulous. She'd gone behind my back. Another message appeared. Don't be angry. I'm trying to help. The Westfields won't wait. And Spencer certainly won't mind. Typed a single word. No. Then I turned off my phone. In the morning, my third day in Vermont, the reality of my father's absence settled over me like a physical weight. I moved through the house, touching objects that held memories. The shotgun we'd used hunting, the toolbox from our construction days, the battered copy of The Old Man and the Sea my father read yearly. I met with Pastor Reynolds, selected readings, chose pallbearers from his construction crew and Marine buddies. By afternoon, everything was arranged. The funeral would be tomorrow. Simple, dignified, as my father would have wanted. When I finally turned my phone back on, the voicemails and texts piled up. All from Audrey, all increasingly urgent. I ignored them and drove back to the house that was now mine. As evening fell, I sat on the porch with a glass of my father's whiskey, the same porch where Spencer had taught me to clean a fish, to change a tire, to throw a proper punch. You defend what's yours, my father had always said. No matter what. I sipped the whiskey and watched the sunset paint the green mountains gold. Something had shifted in me over these 3 days. A recalibration. A return to foundations. My phone rang again. Audrey. This time I answered. The funeral's tomorrow, I said before she could speak. I'll be home the day after. I've already told the Westfields you'll be at the meeting, she replied, her voice tight with anger. I had to practically beg Thomas. That's your problem, I interrupted. Not mine. Do you have any idea what I've had to deal with here, while you're playing the dutiful son to a man who treated you like dirt? You don't know anything about my father. The calm in my voice surprised even me. Or about me, apparently. I know you're throwing away everything we've worked for. Everything I've worked for. The phrase caught me off guard. You've worked for. But she was already moving on. Just come home, Dom. Now. Tonight. We'll figure out the funeral later. No. A sharp intake of breath on the other end. If you do this, if you choose them over me, don't expect things to be the same when you get back. I don't, I said and ended the call. Then I went inside to press my funeral suit. The ceremony was larger than I expected. My father, gruff, hard-edged Spencer Renner, had apparently touched more lives than I'd realized. Construction workers, Marines, fishing buddies, even the librarian who'd set aside new thrillers for him every month. I delivered the eulogy with steady composure, speaking of duty, honor, and the complicated love between fathers and sons. When the honor guard fired their salute and presented me with a folded flag, I felt a surge of pride mingled with regret. At the reception, I shook countless hands, heard countless stories about my father's quiet generosity. How Spencer had rebuilt Mrs. Abernathy's porch for free after her husband died. How he'd paid for Joey Mason's technical college when the boy's family couldn't afford it. He was always saying how his son taught him about giving back. Mrs. Abernathy told me, patting my hand, said you showed him there was more than one way to be strong. Each revelation was another piece of a puzzle I had never properly assembled. By evening, as the last guest departed the American Legion Hall, I felt both drained and strangely at peace. I'd done my duty, honored my father. Tomorrow, I would return to Boston and face whatever waited. But when I reached my father's house now, my phone rang. An unknown number. Dominic Renner, I answered. Dominic, thank God. The voice was familiar but unexpected. It was Harold. Harold Whitford. Audrey's father. My grip tightened on the phone. I hadn't spoken to my father-in-law in years, not since the man had tried to leverage our connection for a government contract. What can I do for you, Harold? It's Audrey. She's a hesitation. She's not well, Dominic. She's making terrible decisions. When are you coming home? Tomorrow. What's happened? She's moved him into your house. That Westfield boy, Thomas, says you two are finished. The words landed like body blows. Thomas Westfield. The client she'd been so desperate for me to meet. How long? I asked, my voice deceptively calm. Months, maybe longer. I tried to talk sense into her, but Harold's voice cracked. She's threatening to sell her shares in your company to him. Says he's going to be her new business partner. I closed my eyes, pieces clicking into place. The insistence on the meeting. The urgency. The accusation. You chose them over me. Why are you telling me this, Harold? You've never cared about my marriage before. Because she's destroying herself, Harold said. And because Thomas Westfield is dangerous. The rumors about his business practices, the women who've accused him. I may not have been supportive of your marriage, but I never wanted to see my daughter ruined. What exactly do you want from me? Come home. Stop her before it's too late. I thought of my father's words. You defend what's yours. No matter what. I'll be there tomorrow, I said. But not to save her. After hanging up, I sat in my father's chair, staring at the urn I'd placed on the mantel. The ashes of a complicated man. A man who, in the end, had been proud of his son. I hear you, Dad, I whispered. Loud and clear. In the morning I packed methodically. My clothes. My father's letter. The flag from the funeral. The cash from the safe. I divided half to Pastor Reynolds for the church roof, half to Murley's for an annual round of drinks in his father's name. The drive back to Boston gave me time to plan. Not in anger, not in haste, but with the methodical precision that had built my security empire. By the time I reached the outskirts of the city, I knew exactly what I would do. Their house sat in Boston's affluent Beacon Hill neighborhood. I parked across the street, watching Thomas Westfield's Bentley occupy my usual parking spot. Lights glowed warmly in the living room windows. I entered silently, using the side door, and heard them in the kitchen. Laughter. The clink of wine glasses. The casual intimacy of lovers who believe themselves safe. The security system hadn't been changed. Why would it be? Audrey had never bothered to learn how it worked. I still can't believe he just left, Thomas was saying. For a funeral of all things. Dom's always been sentimental about family, Audrey replied. It's his weakness. Well, his weakness is our opportunity. Once the board seizes the Westfield proposal. I stepped into the kitchen doorway. Why wait? I'd love to hear it now. The shock on their faces would have been comical under different circumstances. Audrey's wine glass slipped from her fingers, shattering on the marble floor. Dom, she stammered. I didn't expect. My gaze shifted to Thomas. Tall, polished, visibly uncomfortable. Mr. Westfield, you're in my home. Thomas recovered quickly, smoothing his tailored shirt. Dominic, this is awkward. I know, but Audrey explained the situation. Did she? I leaned against the door frame, deceptively casual. What situation would that be, exactly? Don't play games. Audrey snapped, her shock transforming to anger. You chose them over me. You made your priorities clear. Them. I repeated. My dying father? His funeral. That's the them you're referring to. You know what I mean. The Westfield account. Our future. And you threw it away for a man who barely acknowledged you. I smiled without humor. You're right about one thing, Audrey. I did make my priorities clear. I turned to Thomas. You should go now. Wait a minute, Thomas began. Audrey and I have plans. Plans that require my company, I finished. My contacts. My expertise. I stepped closer, and something in my expression made Thomas retreat slightly. Those aren't yours to take. Dom, be reasonable, Audrey pleaded. We can work something out. A civilized dissolution. My father taught me many things, I said, my voice terrifyingly quiet. Chief among them, you defend what's yours. No matter what. The silence that followed was absolute. You have until morning to get out, I told Audrey. Take what you brought into this marriage. Nothing more. You can't do this, she whispered. I already have. I turned to leave, then paused. Oh, and Thomas? Your reputation precedes you. Those rumors about your business practices, the women who've accused you. I wonder how your board would react to concrete evidence. Thomas paled. What evidence? There's nothing. I'm in the security business, I said, my smile cold. Information is my currency. And I've been collecting for years. As I walked out, Audrey called after me. Where are you going? To honor my father, I replied without turning. And to prepare for what comes next. I checked into the Four Seasons, ordered room service, and opened my laptop. The encryption on my private server, a system I designed myself, unlocked with my fingerprint and a 16-character password. Inside was the accumulated intelligence of years running Renner Security International. Not just client files, but insurance information on competitors, corrupt officials, ambitious executives, people like Thomas Westfield. My phone buzzed. A text from Audrey. You're being irrational. Let's talk when you've calmed down. I didn't respond. Instead, I called my second-in-command, Maya Harrison. I need you to secure the office, I said without preamble when she answered. Change all access codes. Freeze all executive authorizations except yours and mine. Something I should know about, boss? Maya's voice was calm. In 5 years working together, I'd never heard her panic. Audrey's been compromised, and she'll likely try to access sensitive information. A beat of silence. Understood. Consider it done. And Maya, schedule an emergency board meeting for tomorrow morning, 8 a.m. I hung up and turned back to my laptop, searching for a specific file. Thomas Westfield. The dossier was comprehensive: financial records, communication logs, behavioral reports. Nothing illegal in my possession of it. Westfield had applied to be a client 3 years earlier, triggering Renner Security's standard background investigation. What they'd uncovered had led me to reject the application. Now, those same findings would serve a different purpose. My phone rang again. Harold Whitford. What happened? Harold demanded. Audrey's hysterical, saying you threatened her and Thomas. I gave her until morning to leave my house, I replied evenly. Hardly a threat. This isn't what I wanted when I called you. What did you want, Harold? For me to beg? To forgive her? To pretend none of this happened? I wanted you to save her from herself, not throw her to the wolves. She chose the wolves, I said. I'm just making sure they don't get what belongs to me in the process. After hanging up, I stared at the Boston skyline through the hotel window. The city lights blurred as my focus turned inward, to memories long suppressed. My mother's funeral when I was 10, my father stoic in uniform, teaching me that men don't cry in public. The lean years afterward, when Spencer worked double shifts to keep food on the table. The arguments when I chose college over the Marines. The grudging pride when my security firm landed its first major contract. And Audrey. Always Audrey. Pushing me to want more, be more, achieve more. Never satisfied with what we had. You need to woo more clients, Dom. Your expertise isn't enough. This house is fine, but imagine what connections we'd make in Beacon Hill. Your father doesn't understand our world. Why do you even bother trying to impress him? Had she ever loved me, or had I simply been a vehicle for her ambitions? My phone buzzed with another text. Not Audrey this time, but a Boston number I didn't recognize. You don't know me, but I know Thomas Westfield. We should talk. Mariah Voss. I hesitated, then searched the name online. Mariah Voss. Former financial analyst at Westfield Enterprises. Left suddenly 3 years ago. No public statement on her departure. I called the number. Mr. Renner? A woman's voice answered. Thank you for calling back. How did you get my number, Miss Voss? I have friends at your company. They suggested you might be interested in what I know about Thomas Westfield. And what would that be? Not over the phone. She paused. Can you meet tomorrow? Trident Booksellers on Newberry. Noon. I'll be there. The morning brought a flurry of activity. The board meeting. Security protocols. Legal preparations. When I entered the Renner Security International headquarters, the atmosphere was tense. Word had spread, though not the details. The boardroom fell silent as I entered. 7 members, including Maya. No Audrey. Thank you for coming on short notice. I began, my voice steady. As of this morning, I am initiating Article 7 of our operating agreement. Murmurs around the table. Article 7. Protection against hostile takeover. Audrey Renner's access to all company systems, files, and facilities is hereby revoked. Her voting rights are suspended pending investigation of breach of fiduciary duty. On what grounds? Asked Bernard Walsh, our legal counsel. I slid folders across the table, one to each board member. Evidence that Mrs. Renner has been sharing proprietary information with Thomas Westfield of Westfield Enterprises, violating her non-disclosure agreement, and potentially compromising client security. The room temperature seemed to drop. These are serious allegations, Dominic. Catherine Oakes, their chief financial officer, said. Is this personal? My marriage is irrelevant to these proceedings, I replied. The evidence speaks for itself. Page 3 details 7 instances of unauthorized access to client files. Files pertaining specifically to government contracts that would interest Westfield. The next hour was methodical. Questions. Concerns. Eventually, a unanimous vote supporting my actions. As the meeting adjourned, Maya lingered. There's more to this, isn't there? She asked when we were alone. Yes, I checked my watch. And I'm about to find out what. Trident Booksellers was busy with the lunch crowd when I arrived. Mariah Voss was easy to spot. Mid-30s, sharp eyes, professional attire. Thank you for meeting me, she said as I sat across from her. I've been following your company for years. You've built something impressive. You didn't ask to meet about my company, I replied. Tell me about Thomas Westfield. She smiled slightly. Direct. I appreciate that. She opened her tablet and slid it across the table. 3 years ago, I was analyzing acquisition targets for Westfield Enterprises. I discovered irregularities in how they vetted these companies. What kind of irregularities? They weren't looking for profitable businesses. They were looking for vulnerabilities. She tapped the screen showing a spreadsheet. Companies with key government contracts. Companies with proprietary technology. Companies with compromised leadership. Understanding dawned. They identify executives with exploitable weaknesses. Exactly. Gambling debts. Affairs. Substance abuse. Or. She met my eyes. Spouses with ambition beyond their means. My jaw tightened. Audrey was targeted. I believe so. When I raised concerns, I was terminated. Threatened with legal action if I spoke out. She took back the tablet. I've been gathering evidence since then, waiting for the right ally. What do you want from me? Protection. And a platform. Together we can stop Westfield before he destroys more companies, more lives. I considered her carefully. You're taking a significant risk approaching me. Lesser risks haven't yielded results. She handed me a small drive. Everything I have is here. Whether you use it is your decision. As she stood to leave, I asked, why me? Why now? Because you just buried your father, she said simply. And men like you, men with something to protect beyond themselves, are rare in our world. The drive contained exactly what she promised. Internal Westfield documents, recorded conversations, financial trails, a methodical campaign to infiltrate and control companies with valuable government contracts, including Renner Security. By evening, I had corroborated enough to be convinced. This wasn't just about my marriage. It was about a systematic attack on everything I'd built. My phone rang. Audrey again. This time I answered. You've gone too far, she said immediately. The board. Really, Dom? Did you think I wouldn't protect my company? Our company, she corrected. I've been part of Renner Security since the beginning. As what? Window dressing? A social secretary? My voice remained calm. You brought nothing but connections, Audrey. Connections you're now trying to leverage against me. That's not. Stop lying. I cut her off. I know about Westfield's targeting strategy. I know you were approached over a year ago. Silence on the other end. What I don't know, I continued, is when you stopped being my wife and became his asset. You don't understand, she finally said, her voice smaller. Thomas showed me what we could become. The contracts we could secure. The power we could wield. We already had everything we needed. No, you had everything you needed. Your company. Your rigid principles. Your approval seeking from a father who couldn't even express basic emotion. Her voice hardened. What about what I needed? And what was that exactly? More? Always more. The naked ambition in her voice was startling. Do you know what it's like to be constantly hungry? To never feel satisfied? I know what it's like to be betrayed, I replied. By someone I trusted completely. Don't be melodramatic. This is business. No, Audrey. This is war. And you fired the first shot. After hanging up, I stared at the drive from Mariah Voss, then at my father's letter, which I'd kept in my pocket since finding it. I wasn't a good father. Too much Marine, not enough dad. Perhaps I hadn't been a good husband either. Too much security expert, not enough partner. But none of that justified what Audrey and Westfield were attempting. I picked up the phone and called Maya. How quickly can we implement Operation Firewall? I asked. The contingency plan? 24 hours, give or take. She sounded surprised. Are we under threat? Yes, I said. And it's time we responded accordingly. Operation Firewall had been designed as a last resort. A complete security lockdown and strategic realignment in case of catastrophic breach. It had never been implemented. Until now. Over the next day, I worked with Maya and a select team to sever all potentially compromised connections. Client files were migrated to new servers. Communication protocols were upgraded. Security clearances were re-verified. And most importantly, a rumor was strategically leaked to the industry. Renner Security had developed breakthrough encryption technology that would revolutionize government communications. There is no such technology, Maya pointed out as we worked through the night. Westfield doesn't know that, I replied. And he won't be able to resist pursuing it. While the operation progressed, I received an unexpected visitor at my temporary office, a converted conference room isolated from the main systems. Mr. Renner, the receptionist called over the intercom, there's a Spencer Reeves here to see you. Says he's an old friend of your father's. I frowned. The name was unfamiliar. Send him in. The man who entered was in his 60s, with a weathered look of someone who'd spent a lifetime outdoors. Military posture, watchful eyes. Thank you for seeing me, he said, extending a calloused hand. Spencer Reeves. I served with your father in Desert Storm. I don't recall him mentioning you, I said, shaking the hand firmly. No reason he would have. We weren't close after the service. Reeves glanced around the office. Impressive operation you've got here. Spencer was proud. So I've heard recently. I gestured to a chair. What can I do for you, Mr. Reeves? Actually, I'm here to do something for you. Reeves sat, setting a worn leather briefcase on his lap. Your father contacted me about 3 months ago. Asked me to hold on to something for him. Said if anything happened to him, I should wait until after the funeral to deliver it to you. From the briefcase, he withdrew a sealed envelope. Spencer said you'd know what to do with it when the time came. Reeves placed it on the desk. Also said to tell you the ghosts are always watching. I stared at the envelope. What does that mean? Marines speak. In our unit, ghosts were the eyes you couldn't see. The surveillance you never detected until it was too late. Reeves stood. Your father was a good man, Dominic. Tough as hell but good. Whatever's in that envelope, he meant it to protect you. After Reeves left, I opened the envelope with careful precision. Inside was a small flash drive and a handwritten note. Dominic, if you're reading this, then Reeves kept his word. Good man. Reeves been keeping tabs on your company. Impressive work. But something caught my attention 6 months ago. Someone asking questions about you in places they shouldn't be. Military contacts. Former associates. Looking for pressure points. I did some digging. The drive has what I found. Not much. I'm an old man with limited resources. But enough to point you in the right direction. Trust your instincts. They've gotten you this far. Dad. P.S. Your mother would be proud too. The drive contains surveillance photos, recorded conversations, notes, all tracking the same target. Thomas Westfield. Investigating my background, my business, my vulnerabilities. Most damning was a recorded conversation between Westfield and an unidentified woman, dated 14 months earlier. Renner's the key to the DARPA contracts, Westfield was saying. His company has the security clearance we need. He won't sell, the woman replied, voice distorted but familiar. Everyone has a price. Not Dominic. He built Renner Security from nothing. As his legacy. Then we find another way in. Through you perhaps. That would take time. We have time. And motivation. A pause. 10 million guaranteed. Plus a position on my executive team. All you have to do is help me acquire what's already half yours. I played the recording twice, my expression hardening. The woman was Audrey. Her speech patterns unmistakable despite the distortion. My father had known. Had been investigating. Had been protecting me. Even in our estrangement. The ghosts are always watching. I called Maya immediately. Change of plans, I said when she answered. I need a complete background check on everyone who's had contact with Audrey in the last 18 months. And I need to know where Thomas Westfield was 3 nights ago when I came home early. That's a lot of surveillance data to sort through. Focus on Beacon Hill first. Specifically any vehicles registered to Westfield Enterprises. While Maya worked, I contacted Mariah Voss. I need more, I said when she answered. Financial transactions between Westfield and my wife. Communication records. Anything that establishes a timeline. I suspected this went deeper than business, she replied. I'll send what I have within the hour. By nightfall, the picture was devastatingly clear. Audrey had been recruited by Westfield 14 months earlier. Their affair had begun shortly after. And the target had always been Renner Security's government contracts, particularly the recent DARPA cybersecurity initiative, worth $350 million. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. We should talk. For Audrey's sake. Thomas Westfield. I stared at the message, my father's voice echoing in my mind. You defend what's yours. No matter what. I typed back. Boston Harbor Hotel Bar. 9. As I waited, I made one final call. To Harold Whitford. Did you know? I asked without preamble. Know what? Harold's voice was wary. That your daughter was selling my company out from under me? That she's been Westfield's asset for over a year. A heavy sigh on the other end. Not at first. I suspected something when she started mentioning Thomas at every family dinner. By the time I confirmed it, they were already involved. Why call me then? Why the concern? Because I finally looked into Thomas Westfield myself. Harold's voice dropped. The man's a predator, Dominic. He uses people, discards them. And Audrey, for all her ambition, is in over her head. So your call wasn't about saving my marriage. It was about saving your daughter from consequences. Can it be both? You were good for her, Dominic. Stable. Principled. And boring, apparently. I checked my watch. It's too late for that now, Harold. But I appreciate the warning. Thomas Westfield was already at the bar when I arrived, nursing what appeared to be an expensive scotch. Tall, polished, radiating the easy confidence of old money. Dominic, he greeted, standing to shake hands. Thank you for meeting me. I ignored the offered hand. Let's skip the pleasantries. What do you want? Westfield smiled slightly and retook his seat, gesturing to the bartender for another drink. I want to resolve this situation amicably. For everyone's benefit. The situation where you targeted my wife to steal my company? I sat across from him. Business is business, Dominic. Nothing personal. Sleeping with my wife feels personal. Westfield's smile faltered slightly. Audrey made her own choices. With your encouragement. Your promises. Your manipulation. I prefer to think of it as opportunity. Westfield leaned forward. She's a remarkable woman. Ambitious. Strategic. Wasted as a corporate wife. And what happens when you've used her to get what you want? When she's served her purpose? Something cold flickered in Westfield's eyes. I take care of my allies. Like Mariah Voss. The name landed like a physical blow. Westfield's composure cracked just for a moment. Mariah was unstable. Made accusations that couldn't be substantiated. She kept records, Thomas. Detailed ones. I watched him carefully. Just like I do. Whatever you think you have, I have enough, I interrupted. Enough to block any attempt to acquire my company. Enough to trigger federal investigations into your business practices. Enough to end you. Westfield's calculated charm vanished, replaced by something harder. You're bluffing. Am I? I stood. You targeted the wrong man, Thomas, and the wrong company. If you go public with accusations, Audrey goes down too, Westfield warned. Is that what you want? To destroy your wife. Ex-wife, I corrected. And she made her choice. Now I'm making mine. As I turned to leave, Westfield called after him. This isn't over, Renner. I looked back, my expression impassive. Actually, it's just beginning. The next morning, I called a second emergency board meeting. This time I laid out everything. Westfield's targeting strategy, Audrey's complicity, the evidence my father and Mariah Voss had compiled. As of this moment, we are under active corporate attack, I concluded. We need to respond accordingly. The boardroom was silent for a long moment. Then Catherine Oakes spoke. What are you proposing exactly? A controlled counteroffensive, I replied. We feed Westfield exactly what he wants. Access to what he believes is our breakthrough encryption technology. But there is no breakthrough, Bernard Walsh pointed out. Westfield doesn't know that. He'll deploy resources to acquire and reverse engineer something that doesn't exist. Meanwhile, we use his distraction to secure the DARPA contract permanently. And Audrey? Maya asked quietly. Mrs. Renner will be removed from the company completely. Her shares purchased at market value, as per our bylaws in cases of malfeasance. The vote was unanimous. Operation Firewall would proceed with the added element of deliberate misinformation. What the military called a honeypot. As the meeting adjourned, my phone buzzed with a text from Audrey. We need to talk. Please. It's not what you think. I didn't respond. Instead, I met with my legal team to initiate divorce proceedings, citing irreconcilable differences and breach of fiduciary duty. The prenuptial agreement was clear. In cases of infidelity, the offending party forfeited rights to company assets. By afternoon, the machinery of separation was in motion: personal, professional, financial. The call from Harold Whitford came as I was reviewing security protocols. What have you done? Harold demanded. Audrey just received divorce papers. Did she expect something different? She expected a chance to explain, to work things out. There's nothing to work out, I replied evenly. She conspired with Westfield to steal my company. She moved him into my home. She made her choice. People make mistakes, Dominic. Especially when they're manipulated by someone like Thomas. This wasn't a mistake, Harold. It was a calculated betrayal. Over 14 months of deception. Silence on the other end. I'm not the villain here, I continued. I'm protecting what I built. What my father taught me to value. Your father? Harold scoffed. The man who couldn't even tell you he was proud until he was dead? The words hit harder than Harold probably intended. At least he was honest, I replied. Unlike your daughter. After hanging up, I stared at my father's letter, still carried in my pocket, increasingly worn at the folds. I wasn't a good father. Too much Marine, not enough dad. But I was always proud. Even when I couldn't say it. Perhaps that was the real inheritance. Not the house or the money, but the example. The commitment to principles. The willingness to fight for what mattered. My phone rang again. Maya. Westfield took the bait, she said without preamble. His team just requested a demonstration of the breakthrough technology for potential investment. Perfect. Schedule it for next week. Maximum security protocols. Full documentation of everyone who attends. And if they try to steal it during the demonstration? That's exactly what we want, I replied. Corporate espionage carries federal penalties, especially when it involves technology supposedly designed for DARPA. As evening fell, I returned to the Four Seasons, now my temporary residence until the divorce was finalized. In the hotel bar, I spotted a familiar face. Mariah Voss nursing a glass of wine. Celebrating? I asked, taking the seat across from her. Observing, she corrected. The word's out that Renner Security has a revolutionary encryption technology. Westfield's people are scrambling to position themselves. Good. It won't be enough, you know. She studied me over her glass. Westfield has contingencies for his contingencies. And your wife? Ex-wife, I corrected. She knows your company intimately. Your methods. Your weaknesses. What are you suggesting? Mariah sat down her wine. That standard corporate warfare won't be sufficient. Westfield doesn't just want your technology or your contracts. He wants to absorb your entire operation. Your reputation. Your legacy. And to do that, he needs me out of the way. Precisely. She leaned forward. How far are you willing to go to protect what's yours? The question echoed my father's words so precisely that I almost smiled. What did you have in mind? A more personal approach. She slid a folder across the table. Westfield's real vulnerability isn't his business. It's his reputation. His carefully constructed image. Inside the folder were photos, documents, testimonials, evidence of misconduct far beyond corporate maneuvering, sexual harassment, financial coercion, blackmail. Where did you get this? I asked, my voice low. I wasn't the only one Westfield discarded when I became inconvenient. Her eyes hardened. There are others. Many others. All willing to speak now, with the right protection. I studied the material carefully. Using it would mean crossing a line. Moving beyond business into something more personal. More devastating. Think about it, Mariah said, standing to leave. But don't take too long. Westfield isn't known for his patience. Alone with my thoughts, I considered my options. The corporate strategy was sound, legal, clean, but potentially insufficient against an adversary willing to use any means necessary. My father's voice again. You defend what's yours. No matter what. My phone buzzed. Another text from Audrey. Please just hear me out. One conversation. This time I replied. Tomorrow. 10 a.m. The office. Then I called Maya. I need everything we have on Thomas Westfield's personal life, I said. Every scandal. Every rumor. Every skeleton. Are we changing strategies? No, we're expanding them. I paused. And I need you to arrange a meeting with someone else. Charlotte Westfield. Thomas's wife? Boss, that's crossing a line. It's a line Westfield crossed first, I replied, when he moved into my home. The next morning, Audrey arrived at my office precisely at 10 o'clock. She looked somehow both defiant and vulnerable, designer clothing contrasting with shadowed eyes. Thank you for seeing me, she said, taking the seat I indicated. You have 10 minutes, I replied, keeping the desk between us. Use them wisely. I made a mistake, she began. A terrible one. But it wasn't what you think. Enlighten me. Thomas approached me last year, yes. But it was about a potential partnership. Not what it became. She twisted her wedding ring, still worn, I noted. He was persuasive. Showed me projections, opportunities, things we could achieve together. We. I repeated. You and I? Or you and him? All of us. Renner Westfield Security. A global powerhouse. And when did it become more than business? She hesitated. Thomas is attentive. He noticed things, remembered details. Made me feel valued. As what? An equal? Or as access to what he really wanted? It wasn't like that. Not at first. She looked down. The affair? It only started 3 months ago. After that argument we had about the Sullivan contract. I remembered. A heated disagreement about accepting a client with questionable ethics but enormous resources. So because I maintained standards, you found someone who didn't? Because you never listened. Her composure cracked slightly. Everything was always about your principles, your vision, your company. When was the last time you asked what I wanted? What did you want, Audrey? Recognition. Respect. A voice in decisions. Her eyes met his. I built connections for this company. I brought in clients. I entertained and worked in smooth paths. And still, I was just Dominic's wife to everyone that mattered. For a moment, just a moment, I felt a flicker of understanding. Then I remembered the recording. 14 months. 10 million. The calculated betrayal. 3 minutes left, I said. Make them count. Audrey's expression hardened. I want to negotiate a clean break. I withdraw all claims to company shares in exchange for a settlement. You have no leverage here, Audrey. The prenup is clear. Your infidelity forfeits any claim. Infidelity has to be proven. And corporate law supersedes marital agreements when it comes to business assets. I almost smiled. Now I was seeing the real Audrey. Calculating. Strategic. You have nothing to negotiate with, I said. Your access is revoked. Your allies are exposed. Even your lover is reconsidering his investment in you. What are you talking about? Westfield met with 3 potential replacements yesterday. Young, ambitious women who could provide the same access you promised. The color drained from her face. You're lying. Am I? I slid a folder across the desk. Surveillance photos from Renner Security's considerable resources. Thomas Westfield dining with a succession of attractive professional women. He's upgrading, Audrey. Trading in for a newer model. This doesn't mean anything, she whispered. But her hands trembled as she closed the folder. Your time's up, I said, standing. The divorce proceeds. It's filed. Your belongings from the house will be delivered to wherever you're staying. I assume that's with Thomas. She stood as well, regaining some composure. You think you've won, but this isn't over. Thomas has resources you can't imagine. Oh, so do I said. Resources my father helped me discover. Your father, she scoffed. The man was a tyrant who couldn't express basic human emotion. And you're just like him. I opened the door. No, Audrey. Worse. As she left, I felt something shift inside me. The last vestige of the marriage we'd shared falling away, replaced by cold resolve. My phone buzzed with a text from Maya. Meeting confirmed. Charlotte Westfield. 2 p.m. The battle lines were drawn. Operation Firewall was in motion. And Dominic Renner, son of Spencer, protector of legacies, was prepared to defend what was his, no matter the cost. Charlotte Westfield met me at a discreet cafe in Cambridge, neutral territory far from financial districts and corporate surveillance. She wasn't what I expected. Where Thomas projected polished aggression, Charlotte radiated quiet intelligence, elegant but understated, with observant eyes that assessed me carefully. Mr. Renner, she greeted me, extending a manicured hand. I must admit, your invitation was unexpected. Mrs. Westfield, thank you for meeting me. I took the seat across from her. I appreciate your discretion. Discretion has become something of a specialty. A small practiced smile though. Oh, I'm curious. Why the CEO of Renner Security would request a meeting with me, rather than my husband? Because this conversation concerns you both. And because I suspect you already know why I'm here. Something flickered in her expression, a calculation. Thomas mentioned negotiations with your company. A potential acquisition. Is that how he described it? I asked mildly. An acquisition. Among other things. She stirred her tea with measured precision. Thomas has many business interests, including my wife. Charlotte stirring paused briefly, then resumed. I don't involve myself in Thomas's professional relationships. Professional. I let the word hang between them. Is that what we're calling it? Mr. Renner, I'm sure you didn't invite me here to discuss marital politics. Why don't we get to the point? Very well. I placed a folder on the table, different from the one I'd shown Audrey. This one contained financial records. Your husband's attempt to acquire my company isn't proceeding as he planned. In fact, it's about to become quite problematic for Westfield Enterprises. Charlotte didn't touch the folder. How so? The supposed encryption technology he's pursuing doesn't exist. It's bait. And when his team attempts to steal it, as they inevitably will, federal authorities will be waiting. That's a serious accusation. It's a serious situation. I leaned forward slightly. One that will impact not just Thomas, but everyone connected to him, including you. And your children. At the mention of children, Charlotte's composure wavered slightly. What exactly do you want from me, Mr. Renner? Information. Leverage. Understanding of what I'm truly dealing with. I met her gaze directly. And perhaps an ally. You think I would betray my husband? I think you're a Harvard-educated former prosecutor who left a promising career to manage the Westfield Family Foundation. I think you've spent 15 years building a reputation for ethical philanthropy, while your husband built his through very different means. I paused. And I think you have more to lose than anyone if Thomas's methods become public. Charlotte was silent for a long moment, studying me with new intensity. You've done your research, she finally said. It's what my company does best. And if I decline to help you, then you'll be navigating the fallout alone when it comes. I stood. You have my number, Mrs. Westfield. Think about your children's future. About your foundation's reputation. I paused. About what kind of legacy you want to leave. I left without waiting for a response, knowing the seeds had been planted. Charlotte Westfield was too intelligent not to recognize the threat. Not from me, but from her husband's actions. Back at Renner Security, preparations for the technology demonstration were underway. A sophisticated facade, servers humming with impressive-looking but meaningless data, technical staff briefed on their roles, security protocols designed to look penetrable to the right observer. Maya joined me in the surveillance room, where monitors displayed every angle of the demonstration space. Westfield confirmed his team will attend tomorrow, she reported. 6 people, including their chief technology officer, and our federal friends in position. If Westfield's people make a move, they'll be documented from every angle. I nodded. And the other matter? Charlotte Westfield accessed our secure portal 20 minutes after your meeting. She viewed all the files we made available. Good. What about Audrey? Still staying at the Four Seasons. Separate room from Westfield, interestingly. She's made calls to 3 different law firms specializing in corporate divorce. I felt no satisfaction at the confirmation of Audrey's situation, only a hollow certainty that everything was proceeding as it must. My phone rang. An unknown number. Dominic Renner, I answered. Mr. Renner. Charlotte Westfield. Her voice was tight, controlled. There's a situation you should be aware of. Thomas has left the country. Private jet. Unauthorized departure from a small airfield outside the city. The federal authorities are already alerted, but that's not why I'm calling. A pause. Before he left, Thomas accessed our private accounts, transferred significant funds. And he mentioned Audrey. My grip tightened on the phone. What about her? He said she still had something valuable. Something worth salvaging. Charlotte's voice dropped. He said she was his insurance policy. The implications were clear. If Audrey still had access to classified information she hadn't yet divulged, she represented both a vulnerability and an asset. Where is she now? I asked. Unknown. She checked out of the Four Seasons yesterday morning. After hanging up, I immediately called Maya. I need Audrey's current location. Now. Already tracking it, Maya replied. After the garage incident, I put surveillance on everyone connected to Westfield, Audrey included. And last confirmed sighting was at her father's house in Cambridge 20 minutes ago. She left in Harold's car, direction east, toward Logan Airport. My mind raced through scenarios. If Audrey was planning to join Thomas, she'd need to clear immigration. With her passport flag, that should be impossible. Unless Thomas had provided alternative documentation. Given his resources, entirely plausible. Alert federal authorities, I instructed. And get me everything on Harold Whitford's movements in the last 24 hours. As I drove toward Logan, I called Harold directly. No answer. Voicemail full. My next call was to my federal contact, Agent Larson. Audrey Renner may be attempting to flee the country, I explained. Possibly with classified information. Possibly to join Thomas Westfield. We're already on it, Larson assured me. All terminals are covered. If she shows, we'll intercept. But something didn't feel right. Audrey was many things, but stupid wasn't one of them. The obvious route would be too risky. Check private airfields, I suggested. Westfield left from one. She might try the same. Already done. Nothing matching her description. Another possibility occurred to me, one that made my blood run cold. What about boats? I asked. Harbor departures. Pause on the other end. Let me check. Yes. A private yacht cleared for departure 30 minutes ago. Registered to Harold Whitford. My grip tightened on the steering wheel. Heading international waters then, presumably to a non-extradition country. I need harbor patrol now. The marina was chaos when I arrived. Federal agents. Harbor patrol. Local police. In the distance, just visible. A sleek yacht cutting through the harbor waters. We've ordered them to return, Agent Larson informed me. No response. Coast Guard is scrambling vessels, but it'll take time. I need a boat, I said simply. Minutes later I was speeding across the harbor in a commandeered patrol vessel, Agent Larson and 2 armed officers alongside. The gap was closing but slowly. The yacht, clearly high-powered, maintained its lead. They'll hit international waters in 20 minutes, the pilot warned. After that, jurisdiction gets complicated. My mind raced through options, discarding each as insufficient. Then I remembered something from my military days, a technique for disabling vessel engines from a distance. Do you have a Barrett sniper rifle on board? I asked the senior officer. Standard equipment. Why? Because I need to stop that boat without harming anyone on it. The officer looked skeptical but nodded to his colleague, who retrieved the rifle from a secure cabinet. You qualified on this? He asked as I took the weapon. Marine Corps training plus some additional expertise. I positioned myself at the bow, calculating distance, wind, vessel movement. I need to get closer. Within 800 yards. The patrol boat surged forward, gaining ground on the fleeing yacht. As we closed to effective range, I steadied myself against the rolling motion, focused the scope and identified my target, the exposed engine compartment near the stern. One shot. Then another. Precisely placed to disable without catastrophic damage. The yacht's speed immediately dropped, black smoke billowing from the engine compartment. Not destroyed but efficiently crippled. Within minutes we had pulled alongside. Federal agents boarded first, securing the vessel. I followed, scanning for Audrey. I found her in the main cabin, surrounded by agents. Harold stood protectively beside her, pale but defiant. You had to follow, Audrey said when she saw me. Not angry, just resigned. Couldn't let it go. You were attempting to flee with classified information, I replied. That's not something I could ignore. Is that what you think? She laughed bitterly. I wasn't fleeing with information, Dom. I was fleeing from Thomas. He threatened me. Said if I didn't provide what he needed, he'd ensure I took the fall for everything. Her voice shook slightly. I have nothing left. No money. No reputation. Nothing worth protecting except my freedom. And the classified files? The ones you've been trying to access. Insurance, she admitted. Protection. Something to bargain with if Thomas sent people after me. She met my gaze directly. I never intended to share them. Just to have leverage. I studied her carefully, looking for the lies, finding instead something unexpected. Fear. Genuine fear. Thomas sent men to attack Dominic last night, Agent Larson informed her. Armed professionals. The threat is real. Harold stepped forward. That's why I helped her. My daughter made terrible choices, but she doesn't deserve to live in fear for the rest of her life. The complexity of the situation settled over me. Audrey's betrayal remained unforgivable, her actions criminal. But the human element, the fear, the desperation added dimensions I hadn't fully considered. The files, I said finally. Where are they? There are no files, Audrey admitted. I never successfully accessed anything classified. Just tried and failed. Agent Larson confirmed this with a nod. Our investigation supports that. Attempts but no successful breaches. I felt a strange mixture of relief and hollow victory. The threat had been less than feared, the vengeance perhaps greater than required. I looked at Audrey, this woman I'd once loved, now a stranger. What happens now is up to the federal authorities. Not me. You won, she said quietly. Isn't that all that matters? This was never about winning, I replied. It was about consequences. As federal agents led Audrey and Harold away, I remained on the yacht, watching the Boston skyline in the distance. The company was secure. Westfield was a fugitive. Audrey would face justice, though perhaps not as severely as I'd initially pursued. Yet the victory felt incomplete. Tainted somehow. My phone buzzed with a text. Maya. Thomas Westfield's private jet reported landing in Venezuela. Non-extradition country. So Westfield had escaped. At least for now. A loose end in an otherwise tightly wrapped conclusion. Mr. Renner, Agent Larson approached. We're ready to head back. I nodded, taking a last look at the water. My father's voice seemed to whisper across the waves. Know when the battle's won. Perhaps it was. Perhaps it was time to focus on rebuilding rather than retribution. As we returned to shore, I made a decision. The final phase of Operation Firewall would proceed, but with an adjustment. Survival, not destruction, would be the goal for everyone involved. 6 months later, I stood at the window of my office, watching snow fall on Boston's financial district. Renner Security International had not just survived the Westfield crisis. It had emerged stronger, securing the DARPA contract and expanding into new markets. The door opened behind me. Maya with the quarterly reports. Numbers look good, she said, placing the folder on my desk. Stocks up 22% since last quarter. The government contracts are solid, and the new cybersecurity division is exceeding projections. And our special projects proceeding as directed? She handed me another, thinner folder. Though I still question the strategy. Inside were updates on the 3 initiatives I had personally authorized and personally funded in the aftermath of the Westfield affair. First, a legal defense fund for Audrey. Not to exonerate her, but to ensure fair representation as she faced reduced charges of attempted corporate espionage. The federal authorities had dropped the more serious national security counts after confirming she'd never actually accessed classified information. Second, a monitoring program tracking Thomas Westfield's activities in Venezuela. Not for retribution but for security, ensuring he couldn't rebuild his network or pose future threats. Third and most significant, the Renner Foundation for Corporate Ethics, established in my father's memory, dedicated to preventing predatory business practices and supporting whistleblowers like Mariah Voss. The foundation's first conference is next month, Maya noted. Charlotte Westfield has confirmed she'll deliver the keynote. I nodded, unsurprised. Charlotte had proven herself not just a survivor, but a reformer restructuring Westfield Enterprises into a model of corporate transparency. Our alliance had evolved into a mutual respect, if not quite friendship. Any word from Harold? I asked. Regular updates as requested. Audrey's house arrest ends next month. The therapy seems to be helping. Maya hesitated. He asked again if you'd consider meeting with her. No, my response was immediate, certain. That chapter is closed. And it was. The divorce had been finalized 4 months earlier. Audrey had lost her claims to company shares but received a settlement sufficient for a modest restart. Not from obligation, but from my recognition that total destruction served no constructive purpose. There's one more thing, Maya said, handing me a final document. From Spencer Reeves. He said it was the last item your father left with him, to be delivered only when everything else was resolved. I took the envelope, identical to the one that had contained the flash drive months earlier. Inside was a single photograph. Spencer Renner in his Marine uniform, arm around a much younger Dominic at his high school graduation. On the back, in his father's distinctive handwriting, the battle ends. The legacy continues. Proud of you, son. I placed the photo carefully on my desk, next to the urn containing my father's ashes. Then I turned back to Maya. Schedule a trip to Vermont next week, I said. There's something I need to do. The Vermont winter had transformed Shelburne into a snow-covered postcard. I drove the familiar route to my father's house, my house now, feeling a strange sense of completion. Inside, everything remained as I'd left it months earlier. Fishing trophies, military commendations, the worn copy of The Old Man and the Sea. I placed the urn carefully on the mantel, then began methodically sorting through his father's belongings. Not to discard but to understand, to preserve what mattered. In the basement I found an unexpected treasure. Detailed journals dating back decades. Spencer Renner, the emotionally reserved Marine, had been a surprisingly prolific writer, documenting thoughts, struggles, pride in his son's achievements. All the things he'd never managed to express directly. One entry, dated just weeks before his death, stood out. Dominic's security company landed another government contract. Read about it in the Wall Street Journal. Called to congratulate him but lost my nerve again. How do you bridge a gap built on decades of silence? Maybe I'll try again tomorrow. Maybe I'll finally tell him I'm proud before it's too late. It had been too late for them. But perhaps not too late for the legacy. As evening fell, I sat on the porch with a glass of my father's whiskey, the same porch where Spencer had taught me to clean a fish, to change a tire, to throw a proper punch. You defend what's yours, his father had always said. No matter what. But now I understood what had been missing from that lesson. What truly mattered wasn't just defending. It was building. Creating something worth the battle. Something that would outlast the conflict. My phone rang. Maya. Sorry to disturb your trip, she began. But there's news. Thomas Westfield was found dead in his Venezuelan compound. Apparent suicide. I absorbed this silently, feeling neither satisfaction nor remorse. Just the closing of a chapter. There's more, Maya continued. Mariah Voss has accepted the position as ethics officer for the foundation, and Charlotte Westfield has proposed a joint initiative between our organizations, focused on corporate accountability. Approve it, I said. And Maya, take the rest of the day off. You've earned it. After hanging up, I raised my glass to my father's urn. Lesson learned, Dad, I said quietly. Battle won. Legacy secured. The snow continued falling as darkness settled over Vermont. In the distance, the Green Mountains stood silent, enduring. Like the foundations his father had built. Like the company Dominic had protected. Like the principles that had guided them both. Not perfect men, either of them. Too much warrior in their blood. But men who understood the value of what they built. The importance of what they defended. And in the end, perhaps that was enough.